What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with my XXL 2023 freshman predictions. XXL Freshman List is back up once again, and we got to talk about who's going to make that list. I've been doing this the last 7 years, pretty experienced at this. I feel like I do a pretty good job. Get at least half right every year. It's challenging. Some years are harder than others, but I like doing it. I think it's a very interesting thing to think about, and what the list means to hip hop has changed over time. So I think it's very interesting to, again, continue to think about it. So I'm going to get into who I think is most likely to make the list for 2023. But before I do, I just want to talk about what the XXL freshman list means at this point, because that's definitely changed, right? It's something that's been around a long time, since the late 2000s. And, it's been a while since it really mattered in terms of artist exposure and recognition, in terms of really boosting and highlighting a upstart artist's career. That is what it used to be about. It is not necessarily about that as much anymore, or at least in the sense that young artists don't need this heavy of a traditional media cosign as they once did. There are more methods to find success, find an audience, than there used to be. Obviously, the reach of social media has played a long part of this the past few years, but also I think more recently, and it's obvious, but the incredible discoverability that TikTok provides in terms of making artists go viral for one reason or another really speeds people's rise up. Now, of course, competition is harder than ever. It is hard to get found, and it's hard to maintain success. We see lots of artists with TikTok hits that don't see those hits translate into full-length album sales or even album streams to the degree you would expect. So it's not like it's easier than it used to be. There are just other ways to find success. Nowadays, too, a lot of artists are operating outside that major label system, maybe only doing distribution deals or doing things on a project by project basis, using something like United Masters. There are more ways to control your own destiny. And I'm going to talk about an artist who is doing exactly that. And that's been a common thing. Think of someone who made the list a few years back, like Annalie Chapa, who literally made the list without even being signed. It's very impressive, but also was basically unheard of back in the day, which is not possible. But the other thing that's happened with the list more recently is it's a lot of established artists, or at least artists with label ties, in the sense that it's not really doing that, showing you someone new, someone who's really coming up and providing that artist with an audience, but also helping all of us perhaps discover someone new. Most people that make this list have a sustained buzz, have a hit, at least on the internet in some regard, and often have label connections or at least distribution. In a sense, those artists don't really need this exposure and this type of cosign the way artists below them do. But, XXL, this is a really big part of their business, and they need people to engage with the list, engage with the freestyles and whatnot. So it makes sense that they try and gravitate towards people that have some kind of audience, so people are more in tuned. In theory, there's, of course, opportunity to really pick more underground, more upstart artists to the benefit of everyone involved, but that's not always what we get. However, I still really enjoy how they go about it. I think for the most part, the methodology is pretty sound. It's pretty logical. So let's get into that. So let's go with, usually they do like 10 to 12 artists they pick every year. Hard to know exactly how many they're going to go with. But we'll just go for around 10 and see what happens. So I'm going to go with I'm going to start with the artists that I think are locks in terms of deserving of being on the list and should be on the list right now. Now, whether they accept the placement, of course, is always an open thing. You can go on Wikipedia. It's a pretty nice breakdown of artists that have declined the XXL list over the years, and that is a storied history. Lots of big artists, some of the biggest artists in rap, have turned this down from time to time. That happens. Sometimes it's pretty genuine. Like, the artist might not have necessarily been the right pick at the time, and then by the time the list comes back around the next year, that artist is so big and doesn't really feel the need to be on the list anymore. It feels like they already outgrown that status and putting those other peers around them. Cardi B is an excellent example of this. By the time XXL came back around in 2018, Cardi had Bodak Yellow explode. She was above the list at that point. It happens. It'd be like that sometimes. So there are a few artists that you could technically apply that to, not to the degree of Cardi, of course, but I think we could start with someone like Ice Spice. Ice Spice is a pretty obvious pick here. She is very deserving of the list because not that long ago, less than a year ago, it has not been that long. She's very much still like in that freshman mold. Ice Spice, exploded last summer with Munch, which became a gold single, a viral hit, and really established Ice Spice as the newest face of Brooklyn drill. And since then, she had that debut EP come out beginning of this year. And off that, you had In Ha Mood chart, that was like almost top 50 in the US. And of course, Boys Larry Part 2 with Pink Panthers. That's a top 10 hit in the country. Actually, top 3 is the peak. Just a massive track, right? You combine Pink Panthers and Ice Spice, two TikTok viral artists, put them together. Shockingly, it worked. Ice Spice is really, I think, kind of finding that mold, and she just does the Princess Diana remix with Nicki Minaj, and that goes number 4, like bunch of hits. And I say all that because even though it's been less than a year, this many hits, this many like top 5 hits, does she really need the list anymore? Who's to say? She's still quite young, so I'm rooting for her to be on the list for the sake of, I like rooting for the list to be good and be reflective of history of rising stars in hip hop. It would be cool if she was on the list. Of course, I wouldn't be shocked if she said no, but we'll just assume she wants to do it, and we'll say Ice Spice, no brainer for sure. Moving right along, someone of a similar thought would be GloRilla. Of course, another artist that has been around, in the mainstream consciousness about a year, less than a year. GloRilla, of course, Memphis rapper, blowing up, only 23, blowing up last summer with FNF, which then parlayed her into that debut EP, which featured Tomorrow 2 with that amazing Cardi B feature. GloRilla signed to CMG, Yo Gotti's label. GloRilla getting a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Performance with FNF, her debut single. It hasn't been that long, but she's already had so much success, so much co-signing. The Grammys, of all people, co-signing her. Another artist, I wouldn't be shocked if she said no. She's got a lot of big features she's been on at this point, too. So I really like GloRilla. She is, I think, a really awesome example of Memphis rap, which is a really buzzing and hot sub-scene within Southern hip-hop. A big thing with the XXL list is we want to represent different genres and scenes and locations within hip-hop, and recognizing a scene like Memphis when you have a no-brainer star rising up out of nowhere the way GloRilla did last year, it seems like a no-brainer to me. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if she declined the placement, but we'll see. So moving on from there, I think there's 2 other like clear locks. One of those would be Armani White, who is 26 years old, out of Philly. Not nearly as famous as anyone else I've mentioned thus far, but people probably know his songs, right? Billie Eilish, his single Billie Eilish, Gold Song, peaked at number 58. People know that one from TikTok. I think it's a pretty genuine song in general. He has a really, I think, fun flow, nice like vocal inflection. He sounds pretty cool. And more recently, he has another TikTok hit with Goated featuring Denzel Curry. Armani White's recently signed to Def Jam, but doesn't have a project, a mixtape, or an album out on that yet. So that major label debut is coming. He had that big VMAs performance where he performed Billie Eilish. So Armani White seems like someone who is quickly rising and makes perfect sense to put on the freshman list. I hope he would accept it because I think he's a really awesome choice. The next artist that, and probably the last artist I'd say is like a clear lock in terms of someone to pick, would be Central C. Now, if you watched my video last year, I talked about Central C and thought he made perfect sense as a selection, and he didn't get picked. Central C has 2 mixtapes out. His last mixtape came out early 2022. It made perfect sense to pick him. He did not get picked. And since not getting picked, of course, Central C had his loose single, Doja, come out on Lyrical Lemonade, and Doja exploded online. Everyone knows the lines. How can I be homophobic? My bitch is gay. Someone tell Doja Cat I'm trying to indulge in that. Amazing lines from like a sub 2-minute song. But Central C, even before that, the reason I thought he made sense to pick last year is that he's only 24 years old now, but he is the face of UK drill. He is the hottest artist in hip hop artist in the UK right now. He has been for about the past year or two. Tons and tons of hits in the UK, but even the fact that he got a song like Doja to cross over in the United States, other songs to smaller degrees like Let Go have found success here. He's getting a lot of attention with every single and like loose song he's putting out. And to have a UK artist, hip hop artist, like really find like mainstream success in the United States, it's just so rare and so uncommon. It should be rewarded. I saw Central C perform in concert about 2 months ago, and I thought it was really awesome. And I've been a fan since I heard him in 2022. And he's, I think, an interesting artist because he's not really signed to a label. He has some distribution deals, but he's been very tactful in how any of his, from the reporting, any of his conversations with labels is like only for specific regions, and he's trying to like really control his output. And it seems really intentional about the kind of deal he's trying to set up for himself. But not only is he a great example of UK drill, but he's also a great example of sample drill, which is like a trend that has affected all subgenres of drill music. And think of his song "Obsessed with You" with the Pink Panther sample. He has the Passenger, "Let Her Go" pull on his song "Let Go." Like, he's doing a lot, I think, of really good things. And in general, I think he's a pretty awesome artist. So shout out Central C. He's someone though that if they picked him last year, it would have made perfect sense. Nowadays, right now, given how successful Doja was, you wouldn't be shocked if he turned it down. And that's just kind of like an L on XXL's part by unintentionally perhaps being late on him as a result. That's how it goes sometimes. But I would say GloRilla, Ice Spice, Armani White, and Central C, 4 locks, should they say yes. From here, I think, is where the list gets incredibly interesting and what makes the XXL list so fun. Obviously, there's the locks that should be on there for like the meritocracy of it all. But now at this stage, there's artists that have following, have success to various degrees, but are not super popular and would definitely get a big profile raised, or at least their profile increased substantially by being on this list. So we'll just kind of go through there. At this point, it's really just a mix of finding that mix, finding that genre blend, and trying to represent various areas in hip hop. So we'll see what we got here. In general, I think it's a more challenging year than others to predict. Sometimes it's quite easy to really figure out where they're going to zero in on. I think this is a pretty hard one. So I'm not super confident in any of these calls. You can make a case for all of these people, which I will do, but there's plenty of people you could pick that I'm not going to mention. But I'm going to go through another like 10 people right now. So I mentioned UK drill with Central C and Brooklyn drill with Ice Spice. There's another great Brooklyn drill candidate, and that would be, Bronx drill candidate. And that would be B-Lovee out of New York City, 2022. He's 22. I mentioned him last year. He did not get picked. His song "My Everything Is Gold." He's got a few EPs out. Not a lock, but I would not be shocked if he got picked. He's rising. Similarly, I mean, K-Flock is another great candidate out of the Bronx, but he's in jail, so I would say he's not going to get picked. But shout out B-Lovee, nice pick. I don't think he's going to make it. He wasn't on the XXL's website, but another UK artist that I want to note is Artie, who's a white rapper out of Brighton. He's had some really cool songs, some cool success, particularly in the UK. And he has like a really fun energy and like personality. Perhaps too early for him, and obviously it's hard for UK artists to make it. But I say shout out Artie, just as a note. He's not going to get picked though. Someone I am going to pick though would be Jaleel, who's a Rhode Island rapper, 27, a bit on the older side. His song "Gnarly," featuring Armani White of all people, I think is a lot of fun. He's a lot of energy. That's kind of his calling card. His song "Dive In," probably the most well known. And he has an album coming next month that could help propel him onto this. I think he's a pretty cool pick, kind of an interesting genre blend that he brings. So I'm rooting for him. Kashdami, only 18 years old, someone who was in the mix last year for sure. He's from Vegas, signed to Republic Records already, has 2 albums and 3 tapes out despite his young age. And his songs "Reparations," "Look in the Mirror" blew up a few years back. He kind of has that SoundCloud rappy, ethereal vibe that we know. They'll probably represent that sound in some regard, given how popular it is right now. Not the biggest fan of his, but I think it's a pretty solid case that he could get on. Someone else who I'm definitely picking for the list, I would call a near lock, probably my closest non-lock. That's a lock. That would be 22-year-old Mike Dimes out of Houston. I think he's a fantastic rapper, so much so that I picked his second album, In Dimes We Trust, for my top 10 albums of 2022 last year at number 10. I think he's absolutely tremendous. He just goes so fucking hard. He has amazing flow. And of course, we know how hot Houston is as a scene with top tier stars like Megan Thee Stallion and Travis Scott, but even more underground people like Maxo Cream. You know, we got to represent Houston. And Mike, man, like, I just think for someone who really only has 2 projects out and some features, like, he goes so hard. Songs like Home and No Trend and Backroom and Paparazzi. Man, I think he's just so fucking hard. And I love him. Actually, we had a comment on the video last year, someone calling him out. I didn't even really know who Mike Dimes was at the time. Shout out whoever left that comment. You were definitely up on it because he definitely needs to be picked this year. Another artist that I picked last year who didn't make it, I was kind of surprised to see him on XXL's website this year. That would be Kenny Mason, who's now 28 years old. Kenny Mason is really notable for making like alternative hip hop, really blending in a lot of rock music, a lot of rock sounds between his Angelic Hood Rap mixtape and Angelic Hood Rap Supercut, and then his most recent project Roughs. Like, he is a really cool, engaging, genre blending hip hop artist. Really big high profile feature on the JIT album last year with Dance Now. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's really great. And I was really surprised to see him on that list. But now that you put him on the list as something that you could vote for, saying he's still eligible to be a freshman, quote unquote, you got to pick him. Kenny Mason's awesome. So I would love to see him there. Someone who I was surprised to not see on the list to be voted on would be Redveil, who people have been like hyping up to be on a freshman list for some time. He's now only 19 years old. Another alternative hip hop artist. He got a lot of music out now. Perhaps a bit raw for my taste, but another very worthy selection should they pick him. Okay, a few more picks. I want to shout out TiaCorine, who has kind of been rising for a few years now, not super well known just yet. Probably best known for her song Freaky T. There's so many great female MCs that XXL thankfully has been picking several every year at this point. That didn't used to be as easy to do. It definitely is now. So I would expect to see many female MCs, especially if the 2 obvious picks like Ice Spice and GloRilla decline. Someone like TiaCorine will make a lot of sense on this list. But even separating that aside, she would be deserving of her own merits from North Carolina. Be a cool pick. Similarly, I want to shout out Lola Brooke, who is a Brooklyn artist who has kind of blown up very recently with her song Don't Play With It, which is an older song from 2021 that, of course, blew up recently on TikTok, as all songs do. She only has a handful of songs out, no album or mixtape yet, just a bunch of singles. So in a sense, it's like kind of early to pick her, and she's pretty young. But on the other hand, getting in now would probably be a great look for XXL should the Lola Brooke momentum continue. That's a lot of New York artists I mentioned. They won't pick that many, but just someone to think about. Also, I want to shout out La Tyler from Florida. We know how hot and crazy it is down in Florida in terms of hip hop, so it'd be nice to represent that scene again. He's best known for his song Backflippin'. Now signed to Atlantic Records. Atlantic could put him on the list pretty easily, you would think. But shout out him. Also want to shout out J&R Choi, who is a Gambian artist based in the UK. Song To the Moon peaked at, I believe, 38 last year. It's a gold song now, of course, a TikTok hit. I don't know how many UK artists they necessarily go for, but Essential C says no. Here's a pretty nice consolation, I would say. And lastly, I just want to note a few other people. Maui, Dro Kenji, who I know from his features with Mike Dimes, kind of has a Juice WRLD sound, Juice WRLD vibe in terms of a melodic hip-hop sound, which is not really represented with any of these other picks, would be an interesting selection. And also Too Rare, who I think is a pretty sneaky pick for this list. Too Rare kind of gives you that sound that everyone would associate with Lil Uzi Vert's I Wanna Rock, which is one of the biggest hip-hop songs of the past few months. Would not be shocked to hear that one on there. But yeah, I think that's it. Um, in terms of my locks, like I said, Central C, GloRilla, Ice Spice, Armani White, easy ones. Then from there, I would say B-Lovee, Jaleel, Kashdami, Kenny Mason, Mike Dimes, TiaCorine, and we'll go with La Tyler. But again, it's hard. It's hard to knock it down. A lot of people I didn't mention. Leave a comment. Let me know, who do you think should make it. Are you really pulling for Baby Drill? For example, there's so many selections. You can't pick everyone. But let me know who you're pulling for, because I think that's what makes it so fun. Is there's so many great selections, and that's why hip hop is the only genre of music that can do something like this. Because no other genre supports this many upstart artists all doing their own thing, all paving their own lanes, and that's what makes it so fun. So leave a comment, let me know, what did you think of my picks? What are your picks? When the list does come out, I will react to that, of course. And of course, I review hip hop on here all the time. So for more of that, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.